Cellar day. Let's go find Jay.
Okay. Technology.
For some reason, it's not showing you guys on my.
On Nicolas-Jay?
Yeah. Hold on a second here. Let's see.
It's at Nicolas-Jay.
All right. Yeah.
You guys are Benchmark Wine, right? BWG. Yep. Yeah, I see your smiling face on here, and I see a photo of our winery. So I must be at the right joint.
You must be. I don't know why it's not letting me add you here. Let's see here. There we go. Got you. Sending the request right now.
Okay.
So we can get you on IG as well.
Yeah.
All right. So turn the volume down on your phone, and I think we should be ready to rock. Hope everyone can hear us. We are using the interwebs multiple ways. So welcome everybody to another episode of Raid Your Cellar by Benchmark Wine Group. I'm your host, Philippe André, also known as Ensemble. And I have an incredible guest with me today, Mr. Jay Borberg of Nikolaj-Jay from the Napa Valley. Thank you so much for coming on today and sending me some incredible wines. So what's up to my Oregon wine fam, and how you doing, Jay?
I'm doing great. Really fun to be here with you. It's a pleasure, and really appreciate all the support and all the folks from the Benchmark Wine community, which a community it is.
Yes, it is. There's a squad.
Dave Parker and crew.
Yes, shout out to Dave Parker. I hope we see him a little bit later. So Jay, I just want to get right into the wines that you've shared with me so generously. Let's talk a little bit about the property here. While I'm sipping on this, tell us a little bit of the background of Nikolaj-Jay and when you guys started, when you got founded, and more importantly, where you guys are.
Sure. Thank you. So Nikolaj-Jay is a partnership between myself, the Jay, obviously, and a far more important part of the name, the Nicolas, which is Jean-Nicolas Mayo. And Jean-Nicolas Mayo, you may know as the winemaker and owner of Mayo Camazet, Domaine Mayo Camazet in Vosne-Romanée. And the reason why he's important to me is because he and I have been friends since the 80s. He went to school with my sister at University of Pennsylvania, or Penn as it is called. I was in the music business at that time, had a record company called IRS Records. And I was in Philadelphia with a band and called up my sister and said, hey, you want to come out and see the show? And she said, I can't, but I've got a bunch of people coming over for dinner. Why don't you come over before the show? And that's where I met Jean-Nicolas. Like, who's the French guy? He's got something to do. His family's got a winery. I know you're really interested in wine. I'm sure you'll find something to talk about. And that started what is now 30-year, it's really hard to do the math, but like a 30-year relationship and friendship. And I approached Jean-Nicolas in about 2011 about the idea of making wine in Oregon. I'd had a small vineyard up in Calistoga, been involved up in Napa with the wine auction and a bunch of different things, sort of bringing music to it and so forth. But had never, I made a little bit of wine, but had never been in the business, so to speak. And Jean-Nicolas, like any good friend, when I approached him, said, it's a very good idea. And the answer is maybe. And I said, what do you mean the answer is maybe? And he said, look, making Mayo Camazet at sort of the top of the food chain in terms of Pinot Noir and Chardonnay, if I'm going to make it elsewhere, which I would love to do, but we have to do the due diligence to make sure that we can make a world-class wine. At least we have to believe that it can be a world-class wine. Others will ultimately judge that, but we have to do the diligence. So we spent part of 2011, all of 2012 and 2013 in Oregon. He made a dozen trips over from France, and we tasted fruit, met winemakers. We actually tasted fruit from over 200 different 200 different vineyards, if you can believe that. And even more importantly, I think we tasted fruit from many different winemakers from the same vineyard. And why that's important is because Jean-Nicolas and I got to see the impact of really crucial winemaking decisions. Some people picked early, some people picked late, some people used whole clusters, some people destemmed fully, some people had 50% new oak, some people had 100% new oak. And we got to actually taste the same grapes from those vineyards, but with different winemaking decisions having been made. And it really showed us what the region was capable and what the impact of the winemaking had on it. And so from that trip, we ended up buying a vineyard, which you are drinking at this very moment.
Okay, so real quick though, what is the process like when you say, okay, I want to buy a property? Walk people quickly through the process. Like you say, hey, I want to buy that. What's that like?
Well, the truth is that we didn't want to buy a property. I mean, we ended up buying Bishop Creek, I won't say by accident, but it wasn't part of the plan. We very specifically wanted to select 8 vineyards. It wasn't necessarily going to be 8. It could have been 6, could have been 10. But what Jean-Nicolas felt was the best vineyards that he could then make a blend to sort of take the best of the different AVAs and have this, if you will, sort of ultimate reflection of the vintage. And he did not want to own anything. I didn't want to own anything because we wanted to learn the region, learn the vineyards, really find out what was happening with it. And so what happened was we selected these different vineyards. We went to the owners, and everybody was gracious, said, we'd love Jean-Nicolas to make wine from our vineyard. We'll find some fruit for you. And one of them that we approached was Bishop Creek, and because we had discovered that in a couple of cellars, and they're one of the few people that said no. We can't find any fruit for you. I mean, it's pretty small. It's 30 acres of land, and at the time, 13 acres planted. And then about 6 months later, it came up for sale. The one of the guys that is in that business called me up and said, I know you're not buying vineyards, but I'd just like to let you know that Bishop Creek is for sale. And they had mentioned that you had wanted to get fruit from it. And so I called Jean-Nicolas, and Jean-Nicolas said, well, this is a vineyard that we discovered. It just now happens to be for sale. And I think it's fate, and we need to pull the trigger. We got to figure out how we can afford to do it. And so we did.
So, okay. So I envision buying a vineyard is like, there's a scene in The Count of Monte Cristo. It's one of my favorite movies, where the guy goes to buy the house. He's got this like horse and carriage, and he goes to the guy, he goes, hey, I'm here to buy your beautiful home. And the guy's like, what are you talking about? Get off my property. And then he opens up the tailgate and literally outspills a bunch of gold. Is that how you guys bought Bishop Creek? You just had like a truck full of gold and you were like, yeah, let's do it.
Exactly. It wasn't a carriage, actually. It was a pickup truck, but it was the same concept, exactly the same concept, with the gold falling out the back. A couple of, just keep it. Like Chevy Chase in that movie where he just has $1,000 bills. Now keep it, just keep it. No, it was not. I mean, you really don't want to go down this road. This was the most difficult real estate deal I've ever done in my life. I mean, the guy, I guess, is a wonderful guy, but he's a lawyer that owned it for a long time. They had always farmed it organically. They had put their heart and soul into it. They tried to open up an urban winery, which was a brilliant idea about 15 years too early, and they just didn't really ever make it. And so he was in his late in life, and it just decided, okay, I'm giving up and I'm selling. So it just wasn't a good vibe, from that standpoint, because his dream had not really come to fruition in the way that I think that he had wanted it to be. And it was just a difficult transaction. But I give the guy wine every year and meet up with him for a beer. And he's actually vicariously, I think, living along the success that Bishop Creek and now this wine, the accolades that this wine has gotten. And I think he deservedly deserves a great deal of credit, because these vines were planted in 1987. They were planted very densely. It's a 5x5 planting, and it's It's 2,200 vines to the acre, mostly Pommard clone. A lot of it is own rooted, which meaning it's not
Wow.
on rootstock, and it's
Okay.
own rooted that does not yet have, I mean, not that it won't one day, but it does not have phylloxera. So they're very, very special vines, and it's a very, very special vineyard. A lot of elevation, always been dry farmed, so never been irrigated. It really is a classic and wonderful place. And everybody said it was really hard to farm. I don't know if you want to buy that. And Jean-Nicolas went and looked at it and he said, perfect, perfect. It's dense, it's steep, it's, you know, all the things that everybody said made it really difficult. He says, I love this vineyard.
Yeah, the struggle is so important to reach, you know, complexity and nuance. So I see that you guys kept Bishop Creek as the name of the property, and it's on the label as well as a, you know, tribute to the former property. You know, was that something that you guys were on the fence about, or you knew unanimously that was going to happen?
No, I think that was the right thing to do. I mean, it has a sense of place, and
Yeah.
all of the vineyards, all of the 8 vineyards that we source fruit from, I think have a really special story and almost a legend, if you will. And I
Yeah.
think that trying to promote that and have that name, I mean, that's why we make Bishop Creek as a single vineyard. Um,
Hmm.
there was a long time that Jason Lett from Irie, that's where he launched his Black Cap brand. You know,
Yeah.
he wasn't part of Irie at that point. His
Yeah.
father, he was separate and he was doing his own thing. And so he farmed, oversaw the farming, and also took a
Wow.
lot of the fruit for his label for, I think, 10 years, up
Wow.
until he then went back into the family business there, and is doing a beautiful job at
I
Irie.
actually have a few bottles of Black Cap. I can't remember what vintage. I want to say it's '08, but that's an incredible
I
story.
guarantee you that's from Bishop Creek, or at least if I mean at least some
Yeah.
part of it. I'm not sure if it was a blend or a single vineyard, but that was his main jam.
Yeah. So, okay, so I'm tasting this right now, and I'm just blown away by the aromatics and the complexity on the nose. It makes me want to drink more. It's decadent. There's a beautiful perfume. Maybe you could share some of the like secret sauce as to how you make your wine so aromatic, and more importantly, what from Bishop Creek is so obvious, like Bishop Creek's when you taste it.
Well, Bishop Creek, it tends to be a bigger wine, but what I think helps with the aromatics and really helps in the mouth, and that sense of wanting to always drink more, has to do with the balance and what I call that, you know, that tension between structure and acidity, and then fruit and terroir. And I think that we're very, very conscious about when we pick. And Jean-Nicolas is no fan of high alcohol wines, and wines that have that sort of super fruit forward element to it. And the Bishop Creek is on marine sedimentary soil. Again, it has that steepness, and the drainage is very good. It is also a wine. I mean, in terms of winemaking, we have this vine to vat program. We hand pick everything. Obviously, we put all the grapes go into cherry bins. We use these. We bring down cherry bins from Washington State because they're very, very shallow. So there's not a lot of depth, and so there's not a lot of breakage and therefore oxidation in the time from when they're in the vat to when they get to the winery and onto the sorting line. We sort everything. Obviously, we always are the first to pick. We pick very early in the morning. I mean, Bishop Creek's our own vineyard, so we're in control of that. But even the other 7 vineyards where we work with farmers, we want those grapes coming into the winery very cold. And then we destem, fully destem. Jean-Nicolas comes from the Henri Jaillet school. That was his mentor there in Burgundy. That was who was making the wines at Mayo-Camazet prior to Jean-Nicolas taking it over. So he had 2 years with Henri. So we fully destem, and then we put them into stainless steel tanks, depending on the lots, you know, 2-ton, 3-ton. We have a couple of 5-ton tanks, and then we cool them. We put them in a cold room to try to stop fermentation from kicking in. We want 3, 4, 5 days of cold soak for that process, and to try to get that transfer. And then we'll move them back out into, I mean, not that it's that warm, but, you know, back out into the main fermentation area, and then fermentation kicks in, and off we go. It's
Very
usually
cool.
pump overs. In fact, almost always pump overs twice a day for much of fermentation. It's really only at the very end when it's down to 1 or 2% that we'll go in with a punch down or two at the very end to make sure there are no unpunctured berries holding a bunch of sugar, so that when we read it as being dry, it really is dry, and that you don't end up with a bunch of sugar coming into it when you put it in the press.
Real quick, I think you got disconnected from the Instagram, Jay, if you don't mind just hopping back on there.
That is no good.
All right.
Let's, why did that happen? Okay. See if that is going. Okay. Are we cooking? Yeah, I think we are. I think we're back live again.
There, okay. Yeah, if you just turn the volume down on your phone.
Yeah, it is. It's all the way down. Why is it? Let me just turn the mic off.
Okay. It's on my end too. This is, yeah. All right. Okay, I think we're good. Oh, no. Here, I'll mute that. Maybe that will help. Does that work?
I think so. I don't know. I mean, I have my mic muted.
Okay.
So, you know,
but I wonder if the folks on Instagram can hear us. So that's the problem, is that our mics are muted. So
yeah, I'm sure somebody's going to comment on whether or not this is actually working. Are you guys getting a bunch of feedback?
Yeah, they can't hear
we can't. We can't hear anything. That's because I muted my mic.
Exactly.
So now I just turned it on, and
I think, yeah, I think you would know a little bit about some feedback and some sound.
You would think I would, but usually that would be an amp, a guitar amp, or a studio, not a damn phone.
So I'm going to say that we probably should invite everyone on Instagram to join us on Facebook Live. I'm sorry that this is a pain, but please join us on Facebook at Benchmark Wine Group, and we'll see you guys there, because I don't want you guys to miss this. See you guys soon. All right. Sorry about that, everybody. We're trying to make sure everybody knows what's going on here and seeing this call today. So you were talking about the pump overs and the sugars. Pump overs, I'm guessing they are in the morning and then again in the afternoon. Is that right?
Yeah, hang on a second. Why is this thing still talking? Okay. Wanted to get rid of that. Come again. So we were, pump overs and then punch downs, and then then we take it and put it in the press, and then we let it settle, and then we put it into barrels. We use about, this Bishop Creek that you're drinking right now is about 50% new oak. We use almost exclusively Francois Frere barrels that Jean-Nicolas has been working with for many, many years. And so he puts in one order from France, and then we get a bunch shipped over to Oregon. We're still working on toast and grain for each vineyard. By that, I mean, he selected certain barrels based on his tasting of the vineyards. And then each year we'll say, well, you know what, maybe it needs a little bit more of this, or I think that the very tight grain might work a little bit better. And so we'll do 1 or 2 barrels that'll have different oak elements, and then go taste those individually, and then decide, you know what, actually the one we've been using is better. And we're trying to basically fine tune the oak program so that each vineyard has absolutely the exact right elements of oak in there. And then our wines are spending anywhere from 14 months to as long as 16, 18 months in oak before we then bottle.
So typically, Bishop Creek, you guys make any large formats?
No large format of Bishop Creek. We do make large formats of the Willamette Valley, and we'll now make large formats of Ensemble, which is the other wine, one of the other wines that we're drinking today.
Okay.
It's the single vineyards, we don't make enough to do large formats.
Yeah.
We're doing magnums at the Willamette Valley, and we actually did some 3-liter and even 1 4-liter, I believe, of them of the Willamette Valley.
Very cool. So maybe if you could just share everybody, how many cases annually are you guys doing with Bishop Creek?
Bishop Creek, we're doing, I believe in this vintage, we did 250 cases of
Okay.
Bishop Creek. We make 3 single vineyards, the Nisa, the Momtazi, and the Bishop Creek. And we make somewhere between 100 and 250 cases of those, depending on the vintage and what's going on. Because the reality is that we blend the Willamette Valley and now the L'Ensemble, which was sort of the evolution of the Willamette Valley, we blend first. And so the amount that we have to be able to make single vineyards varies from vintage to vintage, because to be honest, the flagship wine for us has always been the Willamette Valley. And what I mean by flagship, the wine that kind of has defined our brand, defined Nicolas-Jay. It's as I mentioned earlier, it's Jean-Nicolas and Tracy and my ability to sort of present this penultimate expression of the vintage and really touch many aspects of what Oregon has to offer. The 8 vineyards are spread across 4 different AVAs and pretty much all the different soil types. And I think together, really, we have the ability to sort of craft this wine that really reflects the vintage, which is something that Jean-Nicolas is a big fan of, which is each wine. I mean, you taste the 15, you taste the 16, you taste the 17. By God, they taste different. Well, you know what? It was a little different those years. They weren't all the same. It's not Coca-Cola.
Exactly. So you mentioned the L'Ensemble. Let's taste that.
Absolutely.
So you sent 2018.
That's 2018. That's the first year we made L'Ensemble.
Okay.
L'Ensemble is obviously a musical term, and a term that really kind of has a lot to do with what the mission of that wine is, and that is for the sum to be greater than the parts. And I'm sure you and I would agree that such great wines as Vega Sicilia, the Krug Champagne blends. I mean, has anyone ever complained when you showed up with a bottle of non-vintage Krug? I don't think so, right? They're pretty happy.
I've never been told that I can't join the party with a bottle of Krug.
No, and they never said, well, God, what vineyards are in? That's not a single vineyard. Because what those wines have is they have the ability to really take the best and blend it together and create something that as I said, is really the sum is greater than the parts. And so L'Ensemble is the evolution of the Willamette Valley concept that we started in 2014. And what I mean by that is we have the L'Ensemble is the best barrels from all 8 vineyards.
Wow.
That we blend together to create L'Ensemble. So it's almost like an elevated Willamette Valley. And those of you out there that have been fans of our wine over the years, first of all, thank you. Most importantly, thank you. But second of all, this is not that we're not doing the Willamette Valley. It's just that all the barrels went into the Willamette Valley historically. And we felt, Jean-Nicolas felt, especially in 18, which is a terrific vintage, that there was an opportunity to take it up a notch. And by just picking the best barrels, making a small amount of the L'Ensemble, and then we also make the Willamette Valley. Certainly not to say it's with the leftovers, because all these barrels are fantastic, but we've basically taken an entry-level blend cuvee and then the sort of more collectible one that you want to lay down and have for 10, 15 years. The Willamette Valley is also meant to be more approachable, which is also good on the restaurant end of things, because oftentimes restaurants you're drinking wines quite early in their life, and it's tough for to be able to have older wines. And the Willamette Valley, the idea is that the more immediate gratification aspects of these vineyards that they produce are going to be utilized in the Willamette Valley.
So immediately on the nose, I got a lot more like cocoa and brown sugar, baking spices, and on the palate, I just see this power. But for me, the this it's integrated in a sense where there's complexity, there's delicacy, and yet it's very approachable. I think right now, um, what would you love to see paired with this at a restaurant?
I would love to see like a wild boar ragu on some pasta, some pappardelle. I could do. I'm a big fan of lamb and Pinot Noir.
Hmm.
I mean, obviously, a lot of people are these days are going down the steak road. Salmon is sort of the classic Pinot Noir pairing. Um, I find it great with mushrooms, all kinds of mushrooms. I mean, when you go into that restaurant that has that fantastic selection of morels and like that sautéed blend of wild mushrooms in the right season, this
Hmm.
wine with that is just killer, just killer. What are you thinking?
Yeah, I'm thinking like duck confit with maybe a little bit of foie gras, just and maybe a duck egg. So you just do like D3, not a Mighty Ducks movie, but like, an actual dish. I'm a
I
little
gotta
crazy.
tell you, I mean, that's you top shelf. I knew you were a top shelf guy.
I can't take credit for that. My pops makes a dish like that and it's unreal. And
Yeah, I bet.
like you said, with some mushrooms, some earthiness, that screams, that forest floor, but at the same time, it screams game in a way, and some fat too to go with it. So that's why I think I go all in on the duck for this one. Um,
The other thing I love about the way this is that, I mean, it has strength, it has might, it
yeah.
has weight, but it's not big. What I mean by big, you don't have that alcohol thing going on.
Oh
You
yeah.
don't have that kind of burn, that really high level sort of kind of bite that you don't have that. It's got that sort of depth and complexity, and I do. I mean, it is. I mean, it is approachable, but I got to tell you, 2 years, 3 years,
I
5 years
know.
from now, it's going to be a whole new ball game. Would be
I
my. In
know.
fact,
I
tomorrow
agree.
morning
I
it'll be
agree.
a whole new ball game.
And I should give everybody full disclosure. I decanted these wines 5 hours ago, so I think it's important to understand that I'm doing my best to show these wines, the amount of air that they deserve, and so that I can get a greater glimpse as to where we'll see them develop over the next 5-10 years. Um, if folks have never had Oregon wine with 10, 15 years of age, you need to try it. And I think it's something you need to experience so you can understand why it's so important to wait on wines like this. So yeah, you got a guy. Call the guy, call the team at Benchmark.
You got a
And
guy.
you got a guy now. So find him. So tell us, Jay, a little bit for folks that have never been to the Valley, like what's it like there? What's compelling versus maybe another region in the country to visit?
Well, if anything, the biggest attribute of Oregon, in addition to just the Mother Nature's attributes, are the people and the
Yep.
community. You got a guy from the music business from Los Angeles and a rock star winemaker, hotshot coming from Von Romane into Oregon to make wine. What could go wrong? Answer: everything. Okay, what happened was we were completely embraced in the community. It's the sort of proverbial, can I get a cup of, can I borrow a cup of sugar kind of thing with your next door neighbor? And the answer is always yes and more. Can I help you bake the cake? Is kind of the response. I think Oregon has this very unique attitude about wineries and sort of other winemakers, in the sense that the rising tide raises all ships. And
Mhm.
so if Jean-Nicolas can bring any element of what he does in Burgundy and any of the accolades and any of the quality of wines, if he can bring that to the wines that he makes in Oregon, that is going to rub off on everybody around him and
Yep.
everybody in the community, and it's going to help the entire place. And that's, I mean, it really is that sense of community, and the people are just fantastic. And I mean, look at, you went to Pinot Camp, right? You went out there and did that whole Pinot Camp
Yep.
deal. I mean,
Yep.
what a brilliant event! What a brilliant
It
idea!
is. It is.
You basically invite somms and really passionate wine retail folks out to Oregon. They have to pay to get there, but once they're there, they're on school buses and they're going around the vineyards and tasting and meeting winemakers and seeing pairings with food. And they go home disciples of Oregon, and not
Yep,
just the wines, but disciples, I think, of that community that I'm referring to,
I agree.
which is really special. Very, very special. I feel very lucky and very honored to have become part of that community.
Yeah. I mean, 250 Psalms and yellow school buses and 48 hours of drinking. What could go wrong? Like you said,
Yeah.
but
Well,
I
I
think
was
that
the counselor. I'm a counselor every year on one of those buses. The music is good. I assure you that
is
the
good.
music is good on that bus, and
That
we have a hell of a time. It's really fun. It's really great. But I
what
think
bus?
it really goes to the point that you're talking about sharing and about really having people experience. And I think that's why tourism is up so much in Oregon. I mean, prior to the pandemic, and I'm sure it's going to come roaring back, people visiting Oregon. I mean, granted, a lot of people that love wine had been to Napa, they'd been to Sonoma, they'd been to Santa Barbara, but I think that this is sort of the new hot spot in terms of where people want to go experience wine and get very close to it. I mean, it's not, you don't go up to a tasting room and go up to a bar. You tend to end up being with the owners and with the winemakers, and
Yep.
you really are enmeshed in what's going on.
I completely agree from my experiences. Can't tell you how many times I walked up to a winery or a tasting room and, I next thing you know, I'm talking to one of the proprietors or I'm talking to one of the winemaking team. So I think that just shows and speaks volumes about how, how passionate everybody is and how much everybody relies on each other to get the job done, which really just, I absolutely adore. My family's in the small business restaurant background. So, when you're short staffed, somebody picks up and carries the weight. So I love that about Oregon. I love the grit. I love the passion. And I love the fact that everybody kind of rallies together when they need to.
Yeah.
So speaking of Oregon and rallying, I haven't been out in a couple of years. So maybe you could shed some light into something that I've always been so passionate about Oregon is that vintage variation. So maybe could you share with us like what was 2018 like versus the 2016 that we had a minute ago?
So 2000, when we first started 2014, we went through a series of very, very warm vintages. 14, 15, 16 were super warm. At one point in 15, we had 700-degree days in a row, which is like, what? I mean, it was also right when we were doing sampling, and I'm walking through this vineyard going, I could have done this in California. I mean, I mean, I didn't need to come here for 100-degree days. I mean, we came to Oregon because it was cool.
Yeah.
It was really kind of freaky and really did kind of wig us out about how hot it was in the first few vintages. But 17, we had a respite to that. And 18 and 19, we had even more of a respite to that. What was great about the 18 vintage was that we had enough warmth. It was a long growing season. We had enough warmth to ripen everything, but there was no pressure on picking. And I referenced before that I've sort of come to learn that the picking is one of the most, if not the most important decision that you make, especially as it relates to the balance aspect that I was talking about that we find so essential. And in 18, it was a very cool and sort of long period. And so there wasn't like, okay, we got to pick tomorrow. If we don't pick tomorrow, it's going to like shoot up and get overripe. We had the ability to kind of taste and sort of slowly go through and pick the vineyards. And I think that is reflective in these wines in terms of the depth, the body, and yet at the same time it's got ripeness, but it's not ripe in that way. It's got an elegance that I think is really going to pay off over the years. And again, 16 was much warmer.
Yeah, that's a great point. I was actually out in I think 15 and 16, and I remember, well, one of my favorite times to visit is 4th of July. I think it's an incredible time of year to be out there. I think folks realize that it's like pristine. It gets hot, and I remember those $100 degree days, hearing about them during harvest. You know, it's such an incredible amount of stress that's put on the vine and obviously on the grape, and to have such a delicate, you know, finesse at the end is a really incredible statement to the type of fruit that you guys are working with, but more importantly, the decision making that you guys have. You know, for me, like I've always heard people compare the Willamette Valley to obviously Burgundy, but I don't really see them being comparable. I think Oregon is so unique and is so different. I think you're working with obviously a similar type of material, but maybe could you share one of the things that you guys learned that hey, we're not in Burgundy and like this is clearly Oregon, moments that maybe you guys noticed in the vineyard or in the cellar?
Well, I think there's two sort of answers to that. One is that I think Jean-Nicolas has been somewhat surprised that his winemaking process, or as he calls it, the palette that I arrived with, the sort of set of methodologies and things that he knew to be true about how he made wine in Burgundy, how few of those didn't work in Oregon. In other words, he basically said, I'm going to start out making the wines pretty much the same way I make them in Oregon. I mean, he's adjusting in oak. I mean, we're 30% new oak in the Willamette Valley and the Ensemble, and then usually about 50% with the small amount of single vineyards that we make. So that obviously is different because he's 100% new oak and stuff with a lot of especially the Grand Cru wines that he makes over in Burgundy. But I think most everything that he did in Burgundy, he has done in Oregon, and it's worked, and he's been very, very happy. So I mean, I think one of the things he learned is that, wow, the methodology actually works. Yep. I think we've done several dinners. The first one I was extremely nervous about. We did it actually at that incredible church of food in New York, 11 Madison, and it was a Nicolas-Jay Nikolaj-Jay dinner, and we were drinking Nikolaj-Jay right next to Nicolas-Jay, and this is right at the beginning, and I'm thinking, why would we do that to ourselves?
Yeah,
I mean, that's really not a good idea. And he says, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. It's going to be fine. So, okay. And he was right, incidentally, and we have done it many times subsequently, because by no means do these wines taste the same or anything, not at all. But what you pick up on is similarities in the winemaking. So texture, the thing that all these people at this dinner the first dinner kept talking about is the texture. It's this, you get the same texture in Oregon that you have. And I think that does have to do with the winemaking, and maybe even the pump overs, it has to do with it. And also, I think the other thing that is similar is the again, the way he makes wine, striving for that balance and having that sort of equality between the structure and the fruit. And yet, other than that, there's no comparisons whatsoever, because the wines are completely different. And it always makes me nuts when people say, "So you guys are making Burgundy in Oregon?" And you kind of go, no, you really can't make Burgundy any place other than Burgundy. And you don't want to be a jerk, but it's kind of like, that's not even the goal. I think the sensibilities, one of the great benefits that Jean-Nicolas and I have is we've been drinking wine together for 30 years. And I will add a lot of wine in a lot of different places, which I'm very, very grateful for. But the point is we know each other's palate. And if you laid out, whether it's 5 bottles of Oregon Pinot Noir or 5 bottles of Burgundy Pinot Noir, and you said to us, drink them and then tell us which one you like, Jean-Nicolas and I are 9 times out of 10 going to pick exactly the same 2 wines, the same one. We really, what we're striving for is the same. And so consequently, when people say, well, what kind of wine are you trying to make? And I say, ones we want to drink.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, I mean, that's it. And I think that when you do that, and I mean, I love this wine. This wine, it's like, I'm not embarrassed. I'd pour this wine next to anybody. I don't care what it was. I'm not saying it's the best wine. I would never go there, but it's a wine that I really enjoy. And I think Jean-Nicolas feels the same way about it.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great point. For me, I'm a little biased. I hold Oregon in a very special place in my heart and in my cellar. Um, and it is really frustrating, I think, when I meet other collectors that, try to compare Oregon to Burgundy. And what I found is I've blinded some folks on older bottles of Oregon, and it's been really interesting to see, how people react to it, how delicious it is. Actually had a group of some wine nerd friends the other day for dinner, and we had a bottle of 99 from the Irie property,
Nice.
and it was, I mean, it was arguably the wine of the night, aside from a certain magnum of vintage Charles Heidsieck, but it was delicious.
Of course.
And I think what it just does is it shows people the quality of wine that's achievable in the region. Where do you guys see the region going, and in terms of as a whole, in terms of like the future, and where do you see the valley in the future?
Well, I think the overall wine quality is going up. I bought my first bottle of wine. The first bottle of wine I bought was a 1983 Ponzi.
Okay.
I also had an 83 Irie, which I actually had the great joy of drinking with Veronique Germain, Jason Lett, and Jean Nicolas. We do a dinner every harvest. At the end of every harvest, the four of us get together and I cook dinner, and we do it at our house. We've done it. It's like this tradition that we started. And I found this bottle of 83 Irie in my cellar, and I brought it up, and we served it at that dinner, and it was stunning. It was stunning. But
I
what I
invitation
was
the mail, Jay. I don't know. I don't know why I didn't get invited to that one, but you let me know when the next one is.
well, now that we know each other, I mean, now you never know. And I gotta admit, I can't wait to be in Chicago or
Yes,
Evanston actually,
yes.
and go to your dad's place. That's what I really want to do. Go with all that. But at any rate, I think what is happening in the valley is the bar keeps getting raised. You have more and more winemakers who've been there for a while that keep making better and better wine, and then you have new people coming in and sort of spicing up the mix, if you will, and bringing a larger level of expertise. The consistency is really, really getting amazing, where it's very, very hard to find a bottle of wine these days that is not a good bottle, and at least good, if not great. The other area I think is that we're finding our way with Chardonnay, and I think it, probably started, admittedly, with what Evening Land did and Dominique Lafont coming in there. Obviously, there have been some different plantings lately in the last 20 years. I mean, they started out using much more California clones, and they started out, now they've moved over, in the last 20 years to some Burgundy clones, and that ripen a little bit better in Oregon. But I think the quality of Chardonnays coming out of there is really taking people. And as I travel, I mean, I haven't traveled much in the last year, but the emergence of Oregon Chardonnays is really starting to take people by surprise. And we started our first Chardonnay with a 2018. We grafted over 2 acres of 1998 Pinot Gris, planted in 1998, over to Chardonnay in 2015. And then our first vintage was 2018, which I believe we are going to move on to at some point, right there,
Boom.
right here. And I think that Chardonnay has a great future in Oregon, and there's a lot of people. Walter Scott's doing a great job. Josh Bergstrom's always done a good job. Beaufrere makes a really great Chardonnay. Lingua Franca. There's a lot. I mean, I could keep going. I don't mean to cut the list off there, but a lot of people that are making really good Chardonnay, and we're hoping that we're going to join that party here in the top Chardonnays. This is
Well,
100%.
I can, after smelling it and tasting it, I think you guys are really close, if not already there. So if you guys have not tried this, you need to try Nikolaj-Jay Chardonnay. This is incredible. Tell us how you guys make your Chardonnay.
The Chardonnay is, again, very similar to how he does it in Burgundy. I mean, it's straight into the press, and put them through a crusher, and then into the press. And it's I'm just trying to explain in terms of the specifics of it. It's it takes a long, I mean, we put them into the tank. It takes a long time for it to go into malolactic, which we do in the barrel. It's very slow. I mean, our 2020s, one of them has finished and two others are just finishing now. And that's from last October, or actually September. We don't make very much Chardonnay. This Bishop Creek, we made, I think, 120 cases. So if you would like some, you need to act quickly. In terms of that, I mean, we hope to make more. We planted 3 more acres of Chardonnay at Bishop Creek in 2015. So that is now starting to come online. We have a second Chardonnay called Affinity, which is a blend. It's a few barrels of the Bishop Creek and then some other vineyards that we're sourcing. And we are right now, I mean, this year we're trying to add 1 or 2 more vineyards to our program. And the hope is to try to make ultimately like 700 or 800 cases of Affinity, and then maybe have 2 or 3 single vineyards like we do with on the Pinot Noir side of things. So, I mean, the quantities are still very small in terms of what we're making. I mean, we're making maybe 4,000 cases a year, which is basically about 3,000 plus of Pinot Noir and soon about 1,000 cases of Chardonnay. So it's relatively small quantities.
Yeah, when I first
actually, sorry to finish. One other thing about the Chardonnay is it's all neutral oak with 1 new oak barrel.
Okay.
So there's not very much from it's oak from a texture standpoint, but neither of us are fans of oaky Chardonnays. We come from more of that spectrum with Chablis over here and some of the bigger California Chardonnays over here. We're like on this end of it. You're going to find us more in the Chablis camp.
Yeah, and I think what's so incredible what I'm having right now is it's so pure, and I think it showcases your terroir, your place, and also the variety. I think that really is for me what I'm looking for as a wine lover. I want to know where this is from. I want to taste the grape, and I want it to be pleasurable. I find this saltiness is there for sure.
Yeah,
fruit is definitely there too. I get a little bit of the baking spice, but it's like you said, it's a subtle hint. And then I get a little bit of that cream, that yogurt component. And so it's, for me, this is a total package. Why do you feel like some people are reluctant to try Oregon Chardonnay or to look outside of other regions for Chardonnay?
I think people just get comfortable with things. I mean, I think it is changing. I mean, I'm sensing that it's changing. Talking to sommeliers and wine retailers and so forth, people are willing to look outside of the wines that they have sort of become comfortable with.
Yeah.
I think it just takes a bit of time. I mean, one thing I've learned in the music business, things would take a long time and then they didn't. What I mean by that is you'd work with a band, they'd build a following, they would tour, they'd do all the different things, but then they would catch one song that would really strike a chord and it would go all over the radio, all over the world, on MTV at the time or whatever, on YouTube and whatever nowadays. And it would just explode because you had that thing. That's not how the wine business works. The wine business, as Jean-Nicolas said, is very, very slow. And it's a particularly word of mouth exposure business. It's you and all the people that follow you and listen to what you have to say. And you discover a wine and you talk about it on your Instagram. You do a write-up about it one way or another. And they go, okay, well, if he's saying that, well, then I'll try it. And they go try it. And then they try it and they love it. And then they have their friends over for dinner on Friday night and they buy it. And they say, have you had this? And they say, no, I haven't. What is it? And then they try it. Well, that is incredibly impactful and it works. I mean, people really then try it and they go, wow, this is really good. But it takes a long time. It doesn't, I mean, that doesn't happen overnight. I mean, that happens over months and years and so forth. And so I think Oregon Chardonnay, going back to your question, is actually well on its way. I mean, the accolades it's getting, and I just did a virtual tasting like this with several other winemakers, with Claire from Big Table Farm and a few others, and it was all about Oregon Chardonnay.
Okay.
And people really were talking about just how high the quality was, and how surprised they were, because they kind of thought of, they hadn't had Oregon Chardonnay for 5 years or for 10 years, and they didn't much
Yeah.
like it there. And like, wow, I like basically every wine that I'm tasting on this virtual tasting.
Do y'all still do the Oregon Chardonnay Symposium?
We will. We just,
Okay.
I mean, there wasn't one last year, right?
Correct.
So that was our first year of having a Chardonnay to be part of it. But yes, we absolutely will. I
I,
mean,
I I flew out. I flew out for one many moons ago, and I was blown away again by the quality and the variance of Chardonnay in Oregon. And I was blown away. And for me, being a Burgundy guy and a Burgundy lover, my family's restaurant focuses on fish and seafood. So white Burgundy is kind of the star of our show at our place. I couldn't wait to tell the story of Oregon Chardonnay to my guests, you know, and pairing it with the food. So what would you say, Jay? What would you want to eat with this Chardonnay?
well, given the acidity and the structure and how it'll hold up, I think this wine actually would go very well with some of the Asian foods that people say are very tough to, you know, the Thai foods and the things that they say, wow, it's a tough wine pairing. I think
Mhm.
this Chardonnay will actually go there. I think this would obviously be great with scallops. I mean, that's a tip in. That's obviously very easy call. Um, yeah, I think it's what I think is interesting about it from a food standpoint is the structure. I mean, it's not obviously not the same sharpness that you have in a Sancerre or something along those lines, but it has that edge. It
Yeah, grip.
really
Yep.
it has that grip, right? Exactly, which I think for food is super important. It's not going to get bowled over by the flavors in the food.
Yeah, I'm thinking like chilled lobster, maybe a little bit of, you know, summer corn, maybe a salad, or king crab, chilled king crab. I always, you know, enjoy. And then if I wanted to do fish, you know, like a white fish, maybe some bass, or can ball out and do some Dover sole with some butter sauce, you know, butter and
Oh
lemon.
yeah,
Why not?
getting
Um,
hungry.
I just find these wines so intriguing on their own, but also I know that this can be such a great companion to a meal. And I love that. I love that connection of showing, you know, showing great wine with great food. Um, we definitely we live for those moments when you have that wine
We
and you're like,
do.
wow, oh, aha, like okay, it makes so much sense now, you know?
Yeah. I think it's very true. It's nice to drink these wines on their own, and it's more of a intellectual kind of, you know, you really can analyze and so forth. But where they really shine is, you know, when you've got big plates of food in front of you and a bunch of friends around, and you're
Yep.
eating and drinking. That's when these wines really come to life, which is the idea. I mean, that's the whole point.
Exactly. So speaking of like friends coming together and throwing a party, you guys have a new space for a party?
We do. We do. And I would love to see everybody that's on this Zoom come visit us, and on Facebook. We had when we first started, we didn't want to try to get, you know, find a place and try to go all the stuff of buying equipment and doing this and that and the other. And David Adelsheim, who's a legend, a legitimate living
OG.
legend in
Yeah.
Oregon, he is a big fan of Jean Nicolas wines, and he offered for us to make wine and rent some space, basically rent some space within his winery and be able to use their equipment and so on and so forth. And so we did that for the first 3 years, and then we moved over to the great people at Sokol Blosser, and they had a bigger space, and we started making Chardonnay. But our goal was always to have our own place, but we were either not, we weren't egotistical enough or confident enough. We said, well, we got to make sure that people like it, right? I mean, we have to
Yeah.
make sure we can sell the stuff. It's one thing to make it. And as we got more confidence in the marketability of the wines, we started looking for a place, and we found this lovely piece of property on the north side of the Dundee Hills. So it's a little bit cooler than the south side, where Irie and Drouin and Sokol Blosser, those were Erath, were all those the very first pioneers of Oregon planted on those Dundee Hills, but it was always on the south side. The north obviously has the same volcanic Jori soil, but it's a bit cooler. And this 52-acre property is right at the end of this road, Williamson Road, that becomes Dudley Road, and it backs into the very top. So our property starts at about 450 feet and goes up to about almost 1,000 feet. And
wow.
We have vineyards that'll be at all different elevations. And interestingly, very interesting aspect. I can share my screen if I can pull it off and show you a bit about the, you can see part of the,
is there a recording studio on the property though?
There is not yet a recording studio on the property, but
okay.
Here we go. You can see, let's see here, view. There's no recording studio as of yet, but there will be. Here we go. Okay. So you can see the Mount Hood in the background there on there. That's what this was an old Longhorn cattle barn. And so that top room in the center was where all the hay was, and that's where our tasting room is. And then the production facility where the fermentation room and whatever is underneath that, and then the crush pad to the left. And you can see that photo to the left is where we have had a little bit of snow this year.
Yeah, wow.
You can see in, let's see, in this one, you can see a little bit more of this is from the top. So you can see looking down on the winery there from the very top of the hill. And you can kind of see how the whole thing comes together. And all of that, we've planted 1 acre so far, and we're planting 4 acres in the fall. And then what's really exciting is Jean-Nicolas is doing a agriculture project with cuttings from his vineyard in France. And so one day, it's going to take a long time, but one day we will have some cuttings that will end up being plantings for our vineyards that will come from the Mayo-Camazé vineyard.
Yeah, how do we help? How do we get that pushed through? Do we got to call our?
I think we have to deal with.
Union?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know about that, but we do need to go through the process with the U.S. Department of Agriculture. These are not suitcase clones. Everybody talks about suitcase clones, and in the dead of night, I cut off 2 pieces from Latache. This is good. As he says, I'm going through the front door. I'm doing this legitimately and legally. And so we will have the ability to plant the same plant material.
When you do that, do you get to name the clone, or it just is the same name as it was?
It's beyond, I mean, he has the Massal, I mean, because they're not, those vineyards in France, his like Richebourg vineyard or whatever, they're a bunch of different, it's not one clone, it's, I believe they call it the Massal methodology. So it's 1 million different varieties. So I don't know, that's beyond my pay grade. I don't know. I don't want to give you the wrong answer. I'm not sure how that's going to work.
You got to call it the IRS clone, man. You got to do it.
Wouldn't that be awesome? Exactly. The IRS clone. That would be perfect.
Yeah.
But I mean, we're really excited to have our own
really
place.
fast. They hear that name.
That's right. Everybody's like, okay, let's get that through there. Let's get that out there. Nobody
wants to say no to that one.
Yeah, exactly. Nobody wants to deal with that guy. We're gonna send the Go-Go's to chase you down. But I think having our own home is going to make a big difference. And it's not that we were able to make fantastic wines in other people's homes, but it's kind of like roommates, right? I mean, when you have roommates, it's not that that's not a fun experience. It is, but then you move into your own place and you kind of go, oh, wow. Okay, this is nice. Yeah. There's a lot more control over things, a lot more ability to do what you want to do, and having a place people can come visit and spend time with us and see what we're up to is we've only been open now for a month, but it's by appointment only, but it's really fantastic, and it's really great to be able to have people there.
So you've obviously met some really incredible people in a previous life of yours. And you mentioned earlier that you were nervous when Jean-Nicolas poured, Nikolaj-Jay next to Mayo. Anyone in the wine business that you were like nervous to meet, or that you were kind of like, oh man, we gotta show up for this?
Well, any person in the wine business I was nervous to meet. No, not really. I was very nervous when I went to, I mean, speaking of 11 Madison, I went to 11 Madison, did a tasting for them. They were considering pouring our wine by the glass, and I
There
went
you
and
go.
did a whole tasting for the Sommelier crew. And I
Yep.
was pretty nervous about that, only because I just so badly wanted to have Nicolas-Jay be the by the glass
Please,
wine at
pretty
11
please.
Madison. So I was nervous, but not because of the people. The people were lovely and couldn't have been nicer. I guess I was
Jay,
nervous.
sales, Jay, you know that like the back of your hand.
Yeah, right, exactly. I mean, I was more nervous, I suppose. No, I don't know. Berry Brothers and Rudd is our distributor in the UK, and the first time we went there, we did some dinners with a bunch of wine people in the old caves. They have these
Yep.
fantastic cobs where they do these dinners and so forth. And I mean, I wasn't so much about nervous. It was just this sense of history and the fact that people since 1580 had brought their wines into these same rooms and had poured them for the sort of wine lovers of the day. And I guess it wasn't so much about nervousness, it was more reverence, that I had this kind of thing about, here we are with something that we created. And I really truly believe that every wine, every vintage is sort of a separate painting. It's like Jean-Nicolas even talks about it in terms of painting with different colors and so forth. And here we were with our artwork, and we were showing it to the patrons of the day. And I just was sitting there thinking, how many other people have been in this room either tasting the wines that came in over the boat or whatever it was, or presenting them. And I
Yeah.
thought that was really pretty magical.
Well, it really is. I think that's the beauty of wine, is that it is a generational experience. And you guys both have obviously the next generation doing some great things. And I hope that, one of these days, and at one point, there will be the same type of moment at the Cellar at Nikolaj-Jay. Hopefully in 500 years.
Exactly, in 500
They'll be
years.
talking about, hey, you remember those guys that were, they were talking on like screens, and now it's like, oh, we just appear virtually in front of each other in digital.
Exactly. I do have to give a shout out before we leave to the Go-Go's, who just got into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Wow.
I think day before yesterday, the girls got the news that they were going to go in alongside some other incredible artists. But that is, I'm extremely proud of them. I mean, back in the day, and I remember 1981 when we released that first single, "Our Lips Are Sealed." And an all-girl group. I mean, today it sounds like nothing, but at the time, I mean, that was a big deal. I mean, they had not really broken through. And when that album went #1, and all of them, Belinda, Gina, Kathy, Charlotte, Jane, they're really exceptional women who really gave up a lot and really, I mean, they wrote pop songs and they were fun, but what they were doing was very serious and really important. And I think they were as culturally important as they were musically important in terms of fashion and the way that girls dressed. I'll never forget this show, their homecoming show, after the album went #1 back at the Greek Theater in Los Angeles. And there was like a million girls there from like 14 to 30, and they were all wearing these clothes that were all completely influenced by the Go-Go's. And I'm thinking, wow, this is like a social phenomenon. This is something that is really impacting these people's lives. So anyways, I know that we're here to talk about wine, but I just have to do a little shout out for the Go-Go's. Yeah, there we are.
I had to give him a shout out, man. That's incredible. Yeah, congratulations to the Go-Go's Rock and Roll Hall of Fame 2021. Wow. So Jay, I just, I know we're catching up to time here. I really want to thank you so much for your generosity in sharing some of your incredible wines. And I hope that we can have a taste together in person when the time is right. I will be out very soon. I promise you that. So thanks for sharing us your stories. Thanks for carrying on the tradition in the Willamette Valley. And looking forward to seeing you very soon in person, man. So
I
cheers.
appreciate it. Thank you
Yeah.
so much for having me, and appreciate all the work you put into putting this together, and all the people that participated. Thanks. I mean, time is precious. We don't have, it's not unlimited, and to be able to spend some of it with the two of us, we're very grateful. So thanks so much.
Yes, thank you. And thanks to the Benchmark Wine Group team. Thank you guys. See you very soon.
All
Rock
right.
on.
Take care.